Are you considering starting a business while you're still in college? Find out how to increase your chance of success by choosing the most promising business model and mentors to start. Once you've launched your business, your challenges are just beginning. You'll have to figure out when and how to approach investors and how to market your new firm. Today, we're going to talk about 10 critical do's and don'ts when starting a business, either as a college student or a recent grad. I'm Vanessa O'Connell, the entrepreneurship editor for the Wall Street Journal, and I'm here at the Journal. I oversee coverage of entrepreneurs, as well as the Accelerators blog, which is a blog about the challenges of starting a new business. My guests today are Christina Bechhold, who is the founder of Empire Angels, a group of young angels and young professionals investing in startups, as well as Amy Wilkinson, the author of The Creator's Code, the 6 essential skills of extraordinary entrepreneurs. Welcome, Christina and Amy.
Thank you.
Let's get started.
Great.
First, we're going to run through some of the tips for those of you who are currently in college and considering launching a business. Think of these tips as your roadmap. We're going to start off with, don't be an entrepreneur for the money. Start a business because you're passionate about solving a specific problem. Christina, tell us why this is important.
Well, the truth is that most startups fail, and you end up losing more money than you make. So you really need to have some sort of intrinsic motivation for why you want to get into some sort of company. And that may be that you're solving a problem that is very personal to you, or you're fixing an inefficiency that's really irksome to you. But what you want to avoid is getting a year into working in this company or this space or this industry and finding that you're bored or frustrated because you got into it for ultimately an unsustainable reason.
That's probably hard for a lot of young people to accept, that they don't necessarily have to be in it for the money. How do you figure out how to also build a successful business around something that you're passionate about?
I think a lot of that comes down to finding, getting great feedback about the idea that you have, and a lot of times I think people are really excited about an opportunity and don't know how to turn it from an idea into a business. And ultimately, businesses need to make money, and especially if you're thinking about taking on outside capital, you're going to need to be returning money to other people that you are now responsible to. So I think a lot of it is just getting feedback and help from others about what does the business model look like, how can I ultimately make money off of this for myself and for others, and make this a long-term sustainable business.
Next, be flexible in your thinking in order to spot opportunities that others don't see. Amy, how can you encourage students to be flexible in their thinking and to recognize the opportunities that are out there in the marketplace?
So all of us can be alert, right? And flexibility starts with asking a whole lot of questions. So I did 200 interviews with the leading entrepreneurs, and I can tell you that there's 3 patterns by which people observe and spot things. One is what Howard Schultz did at Starbucks. So I'm calling it a sunbird. It's the idea that you see something in one place, you pick it up, you fly it over, and you apply it somewhere else. So he saw coffee culture in Italy. He didn't invent that, right? He observed it, and then he brought it back to Seattle and took it on. So that would be, one way of thinking. Another would be as an architect. So you see a problem. It's just what Christina said. You address the problem, and then you build something from the ground up. So this might be the Spanx founder, Sarah Blakely. She's a door-to-door fax saleswoman before she starts that company. It's a problem, an irritation. She needs an undergarment she doesn't have. She starts that company with $5,000, and she becomes a billionaire, right? Or you could be an integrator like Steve Ells at Chipotle, and he's a chef, but he wanted fast food that would be healthier. So he integrated cooking right in front of you with a fast food model. And that flexible thinking created an absolutely enormous company, Chipotle, that we all know. So there's just different ways of asking questions and seeing things. But those 3 patterns are really things that all of us can do.
Number 3, assemble a founding team with the necessary skills to execute. So Christina, tell us why this can be a challenge and what skills do people need to be sure they have covered?
I really like investing as an investor in teams of people that have worked together before. And when you're coming out of college, that may mean that you work together on a project, or you were involved in an activity or club together, or maybe you had an internship at the same time. But you want to find people that you have you've addressed challenges with before, and also overcome, I would say, differences in opinion about different decisions that need to be made, so that you know that you really work together as a cohesive team. And all the research shows that diverse teams are are much better than homogenous ones. And diversity comes in a lot of different forms. It's not just gender or race, which people typically think of, but also complementary skill sets, people with different backgrounds and experiences that really help each other not only to move the business forward, but also challenge each other in the ways that they think. And so maybe that means that, if you're in the undergraduate business program, you reach out to students in the arts and sciences who are, philosophy majors or computer science majors or biology majors who are developing different thinking patterns than you are and may have a complementary skill set for whatever it is that you're trying to do.
And are you suggesting that people would approach them and say, hey, I'm looking for a co-founder who can X, Y, or Z that I cannot do myself? Even though I have this great idea for a business.
Absolutely. I see so many college students who have fantastic business ideas but just don't know how to execute them because they don't themselves have the necessary skills. So, take advantage of the fact that you're surrounded by all of these, very smart, talented people who are probably sharing interests that you have. Reach out to your professors and find out if maybe they can recommend someone from one of their classes. That's always a great way to get names. And yeah, I think there's lots of opportunity to connect with other people that you may not know on your campus to do that.
Great. Tip number 4, tap into cultural and cognitive diversity on campus to build on your idea. Now, Amy, how has this strategy played out for some of the entrepreneurs you spoke to who've already built successful businesses?
Sure. So there are great examples. So the Pulse founders at Stanford, 2 guys, one electrical engineer, one computer science major, Akshay and Anjit, they basically harnessed all the different cognitive diversity around, and then they built that a business in a cafe on University Avenue, asking everybody who came into the cafe how they read news. It's a news application, and LinkedIn bought it. So it's the LinkedIn Pulse application now. But they were just kids on campus and talking to other people on campus and then talking to people on University Avenue, and created a company that was acquired for $90 million by LinkedIn. So there's an example out of Stanford. There's also a great study at Northwestern that students should know about with fraternities and sororities. So this is to the point of cognitive diversity. People can think differently, but we surround ourselves with people who think like us. So people of the same fraternity and the same sorority were brought together. They were asked to solve a murder mystery. Then they brought in an outsider from a different fraternity or a different sorority. That makes people feel uncomfortable. That's a different kind of person that's there with you. But the results of the study showed that if you solve a problem alone, you get it right 44% of the time. If you're with the people like you, you get it right 54% of the time. But if you bring this cognitive diversity, different people together, you can solve a problem 75% of the time. So it's another example on campus. Look for people who are not in your group. Look for people that are trained differently or just come with a different point of view, and that will help you solve problems.
And do you suggest paying them sort of as market research or a focus group kind of scenario, or bringing them on as co-founders, or how do you sort of execute that?
I think there's lots of ways that you just ask to partner. You build allies. I don't think it's as formal as co-founders or as formal as paying people. I think students on campuses, they really do like to collaborate. I mean, I teach at Stanford Business School, right? Kids are getting together all the time at the undergraduate level, at the graduate level, simply to talk about ideas. And I think that's where it starts. It's not a formal process. It's an informal thing that organically starts. And if you can build on each other's ideas, that's where these great companies come from.
Great. Number 5, which plays into what we were just discussing, use the natural test pool around you and leverage your classmates to get feedback on your products. Tell us, Christina, what you mean by that.
So I've never met someone who doesn't like giving their opinion on something. Everyone loves being asked for their opinion, and generally I think people are very happy to be helpful to startups and for people who are trying to test out new ideas. College is one of the few times that you're going to be surrounded by a natural sort of pool of people who more than likely may be your target market. So you should use that to your advantage. And you should start gathering feedback from people as soon as you have something to get feedback on. I mean, that could be as simple as wireframes for a website or an idea on a napkin. But you should go out and try to get feedback from the people that you think would be your users or clients of what you're trying to build, and start using that to iterate on what exactly you're doing. The great early stage companies are wonderful at building something quickly, getting feedback, iterating on it, and making small adjustments until they find the right fit.
One thing I think some founders struggle with is just, dealing with too much feedback and filtering kind of what is meaningful from what is maybe just noise.
Sure.
Do you have any suggestions for people on that front?
I think you need to really look at where the feedback is coming from. You know, I consulted for an early stage company where I was doing all of the customer service, and I was receiving all of this feedback from people every day, you know, hundreds of emails. Some were very pleasant, some were not so pleasant, and figuring out which ones ultimately needed to be passed on to the team that was building the product as really legitimately useful was often a challenge. And a lot of times we looked at, you know, is this person sitting in our target market? You can do, you know, research on people who are giving you this feedback, if it's unsolicited in particular, and try to figure out, are those really the people that I'm trying to reach with what I'm doing, or is that just sort of noise from something that I can put to the side and really focus on the people or the clients or the users that I'm trying to serve? So sometimes that just takes a little bit of extra effort to figure out where that feedback is coming from and whether or not it's really meaningful to what you're trying to do.
So as you go about soliciting feedback, just be sure you keep your target market in mind.
Absolutely.
Tip number 6, when you need to adjust your plan, try to make those adjustments very quickly. Amy, what kinds of adjustments are we talking about? What kinds of adjustments do founders typically have to make very early on in the seed stage of their companies?
So founders have to do one of the skills in this book that I've outlined called Fly the OODA loop. And it's observe, orient, decide, and act. And you have to do that in a fast loop. It is the fast cycle iteration concept. What you have to do when you observe is look for something that doesn't make sense. Look for a glitch, right? Look for an anomaly. Many people dismiss that. The PayPal team is a great example. So they started and had 6 different business models. So one of the things they observed, they raised money on beaming money between Palm Pilots. Then they observed that everyone wanted the website. Everyone wanted to try to move money on a website. It didn't make any sense to these guys who had designed what they thought was a lot better technology that people would want an online support site to do all this stuff. They quickly oriented, decided, and acted, built that. Then they observed that eBay users were trying to use their product for auctions. They thought, oh, crazy eBay people, go away. Then they had an epiphany. They're like, we can observe it, orient, decide, and act. They built that company on top of eBay, right? Then they saw chargebacks, all this fraud coming in, and they quickly decided and acted to stop it faster than the competitors. And they sold to eBay. They got ahead of a huge company and they sold to eBay. But the more interesting thing is what happens next, which is they go and seed the whole next wave of the internet. And they start YouTube and Yelp and LinkedIn and Slide and Dig and Tesla Motors and SpaceX. They put the first money behind Facebook, right? And when you spend time with these guys and you say, what is it? They talk about, like, Jeremy Stoppelman at Yelp was an intern at PayPal. So he'll talk about, hey, I saw that it was going to be hard. We'd have to move this thing through. He looks for a counterintuitive blip of data. There's a direct quote. And Yelp was supposed to be an email referral system. They had a tiny little feature that was like, do you want to write a review? Jeremy did not think anyone would want to review the local dry cleaner or hair salon or whatever. He just didn't think that would be fun. And then everybody wanted to do that. So that's what you observe. You look for the counterintuitive point. You use data to try to inform. And then you decide and act really quickly. So everybody can do that. We can all fly the OODA loop, right?
And that's really about sort of recognizing the bigger opportunity that may be out there. Even if you're focused on one thing, if you can adjust quickly, there may be a bigger opportunity for your business, for your idea.
I think that's right, but people have to look at concrete particulars. Right? So many entrepreneurs and students, they want to change the world, and everybody talks about that. That's just this huge amorphous concept. If you're actually going to do it, you have to really observe, orient, decide, and act on concrete facts. So, it makes it also easier to accomplish. You can zero right in on what is the data telling you? What is the market telling you? What is your friend telling you? What's a customer telling you? And feedback, it's the same point that was made earlier. Feedback is great because if you have a prototype, everyone will tell you what's wrong with it. That's actually good, because you can bring all that brain power and make it better. And so that's what you want.
Great. Now we're going to move on to a don't, actually. Our tip number 7 is don't assume that spending money on marketing is the only way to attract users or customers. Be scrappy and be creative. So, Christina, can you tell us some of the maybe low-cost ways that founders who are in college or recent college grads can think about getting the word out on their startups and
Absolutely.
Their products?
I think when you decide that you want to get into a particular industry or you have an idea for a solution to a specific problem, you should start a blog. start getting your thoughts out there about, what's your opinion on the problem in this space and what you think the solution might look like. Thought leadership is a great free way to start putting your opinions and your thoughts out there about why what you want to do is special and unique and why you're the one to do it. Another thing that you can do is engage with influencers. Platforms like Twitter and even Instagram are places that give you really easy access to individuals who may be very influential or decision makers in a space that you're trying to get into. And you'd be amazed how easy it is to reach out to them and engage in a conversation. And engaging with them really does mean engaging in a topical conversation with them, not just tweeting at them that, I have this great idea and would love to talk to you about it, but actually looking at what they're talking about and trying to add your opinions and thoughts into that conversation is a great way to get noticed. And I'm amazed how many people I've actually developed real life relationships with just through conversations that started on Twitter in areas that I thought were interesting. So that's a very quick, easy way, even while you're building what your business may be, to start getting involved. And then I would say later on, start looking for high impact access points to the target markets that you're looking for. So that may be, for example, a trade association whose members are all, the types of clients that you're trying to reach, or a partnership with another startup or brand that has a complementary product that fits within your same target market and may have a larger access than you do right now, and that the two of you could work together on something that would help to promote both of your solutions. So there are a lot of ways to go about being creative, I think, in the way that you get access to customers, and that's ultimately what marketing is about.
Does it ever make sense to spend money on marketing at a very early stage?
I have not seen many examples of where it has been. I know that a lot, for Facebook ads, for example, that's the first thing that people tend to want to spend money on, or Google AdWords for SEO. That can, in certain products and services, can be very helpful, and you should figure out whether or not that, for your particular industry, that is. But you want to make sure that making those kinds of decisions on what you spend money on for paid marketing is very much data-driven. You need to look at the numbers and really make sure that for every dollar you're putting out, you're getting more than $1 back.
Great. Eighth tip is anticipate some failure and avoid getting stuck in a trap of regret. So don't get stuck looking back. Amy, do you have any suggestions for how to actually pull this off?
Sure. So one idea is to set a failure ratio at the outset. So realize that you're not going to be perfect, that we live in a really fast-changing world. It's globally linked. It's technology accelerated. It's impossible to know what is coming next. So if you set a ratio that says, I'll get it wrong 10% of the time, or 1 in 3 things I try 30% of the time, it might not work, that's actually the way to push the envelope and make it okay to be imperfect. Another idea is to just never look back, right? There's research around counterfactual thinking, and entrepreneurs do not say, oh, I wish that it had gone another way. Oh, if I could go back, if I could do it again. No, just don't engage in that. Only go forward. So Airbnb is a great example. Joe and Brian were Rhode Island School of Design designers living in San Francisco. They got a note under their door that their rent went up 25%, and they couldn't pay it. And so they had air mattresses. They invited other designers at a conference to stay with them, and then they tried to launch what became Airbnb. But what many people don't know is they launched the first time and it didn't work. They could have been, really doom and gloom about that. They weren't. Then they just decided, we'll launch again. They tried at South by Southwest to have their Twitter moment. They were saying virtually like 3 people or something signed up. It didn't work again. So they relaunched. And then they launched in 2008 around the presidential campaigns, again, conference model. And that finally gained some traction. But they're really funny about the fact that if you launch and it doesn't work, just relaunch. Right? I mean, this is the thing. You can't be nostalgic. You can't be emotional. You have to quick release things that don't work and just keep moving forward.
And luckily, we live in a country where failure is not necessarily a stigma. When you're an entrepreneur, people are used to it. Investors are used to hearing that you've failed at something in the past. Am I right?
Absolutely. Sometimes hearing that someone has failed multiple times and still gotten up and kept going actually makes you want to support them more, believe it or not.
It can be a badge of honor, right? I mean, because as long as you learn through it, as long as you come out stronger for it. And there are many examples, like the JetBlue founder. He's failed 3 or 4 times. Fired from Southwest. His first company had filed for bankruptcy. He was actually fired by the board at JetBlue. Now he's running Azul, the fastest growing airline in Brazil. I mean, you see people like that just get up one more time. And you don't even realize that they've had these stumbling blocks.
I think that's especially important for college students to keep in mind.
Right, right.
Our ninth tip is to consider approaching student-run investment arms, investing in student-run companies for funds. And Dorm Room Fund is one example of those. There are a couple of others out there. Christina, what do you think of these funds?
I think they're great. I mean, I actually started Empire Angels, my angel group, with a friend from college because we felt really strongly that as young investors, we could identify and understand a lot of the opportunities and solutions that people our age were trying to bring to market. And so we were really peers investing in peers. So I believe very strongly that young people who are often the target market for the products or services that their friends are building, are great people to really quickly understand what it is that you're building and why it's valuable, and then can sell that later to some other investors that once you've gotten your company off of the ground.
And often when founders are still in college, a lot of their business ideas are really aimed at the college student market, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
It's their environment for the time being, and they're probably thinking about ways to improve, could be anything for a college student. Do you see that a lot?
I've seen a lot of people who will do something like that in college and see it do fairly well, and then you parlay that experience into another opportunity once they graduate. I've seen a few examples of people who've started things in college and then use that afterwards to turn into a bigger business. I went to Boston College. WePay is a great example. It was an idea that a student had and then took out afterwards, and it's done incredibly well. I know Spoon University is one that's based in New York now and had started on college campuses putting together clubs of people who are really interested in food and cooking and restaurants, and have now grown that into a very large opportunity. So it absolutely can happen, but also just see college as an opportunity to try new things and see what works and what doesn't, and use that experience once you graduate to try something else.
Great. And our 10th tip is one that has to do with karma. Don't be selfish. Act generously toward others. So Amy, tell us why this is important.
So today, generosity actually increases productivity. And the reason is that our reputations are completely transparent. So this is the founding of LinkedIn. So Reid Hoffman started LinkedIn with the idea that if we were all linked together, that you could forward a resume easily, you could open another opportunity for a colleague. And with that transparency is the fact that we all want to work with those kind of people. So if you are generous, people know that, right? And they bring you information, they bring you opportunities, they bring you deal flow. There's a whole lot that happens that's wonderful out of gifting small goods, like just paying it forward with little tiny small kindnesses. There are lots of examples on college campuses. You know, a great one is Under Armour out of the University of Maryland. And Kevin Blank was a football player known as the, quote, sweatiest football player because he just had to work harder than everybody else. And he was wearing this cotton sweaty T-shirt under his uniform. He did a synthetic fabric shirt. And then he went locker room to locker room trying to pass them out and have his fellow football players use it. And then today it's a $3 billion in revenue global brand. But that started on a college campus, just one football player, you know, trying to make himself and other people a little bit better athletes. So, it's very easy to find ways to help other people, and then it actually just helps build whatever you're trying to do.
Great. Well, before we got started today, we did get some questions that were sent in from viewers who are turning in. So we've got a couple minutes left. I might just shoot each one of you a couple of these if you don't mind. One question that I hear a lot, actually, not just from young entrepreneurs, but even from those who have some seasoning, is advice on finding the right mentors. Christina, could you weigh in on that one for me?
A lot of times the right mentors are going to be ones that you encounter very serendipitously. It's not going to be people that you may necessarily seek out or sort of naturally introduced to. So, I always encourage people to attend lots of events, think very broadly about who mentors might be, and really evaluate what are the skills that you are very strong with, and what are you lacking, and who are the people who can help provide that to you. So if you're starting a fashion business, for example, and have no experience in supply chain management, go find someone who has done that before, someone who has the experience in that space and can help bring that sort of advisory to your company. Because you really want to look for, in the same way that you build a team, you also want to build your advisor and mentor network with people who have more experience and can help to pass that on to what you're doing.
Question also that comes out of our first tip don't be in it for the money, but how about for a flexible schedule, as in among with young kids? Since you started out with that tip, Christina, can you take that question too?
Sure. I think absolutely there are probably going to be multiple motivations for why someone decides to be an entrepreneur. If you're a mom with young kids, I have many friends who are in that place right now, and many want to start Etsy shops because it's an opportunity to use their skills to, in a creative way, and also gives them the flexibility on schedule and how they manage their time. So I think that's an equally good reason. I don't know that should necessarily be the singular motivation for why you do something, because ultimately you really want to be motivated by something that's very, very special and I think personal to you, that can be ultimately very very useful in the long term.
Well, we're running out of time. Before we wrap up, I just want to point out that if you'd like to hear more, or read more, I should say, of Amy's research, you can do so in her book, The Creator's Code, which I highly recommend. You can also read more of Christina's views on our blog, The Accelerators, which is a Wall Street Journal blog on starting a business. Christina writes very frequently for us. So we're out of time. Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you, Christina. And great questions, viewers. Tune in next time.